Okay, I apologize for the delay. The time is 8 o'clock. I'm going to call this regular business and public hearing of the mayor and council to order. Today is Monday, July 28, 2014. All members of the mayor and council are present. First, we'll start tonight with an invocation. We have Mr. Neil Singley from Grace Baptist Church. If you'll come forward and lead us in tonight's invocation.
Let us all bow our heads and look to the Lord. Thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for God, everything you've done for us today, God. God, you might bless in this meeting tonight, God. You might give us what we stand in need of tonight. Help us, oh God, it would be found doing what thou hast to do, God, and lead us as we go on through this journey of life, God. And thank you for everything that you've already done for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Tonight's announcements: on August 1st, we'll have a blood drive here at City Hall in the community room from 1:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. To learn more about blood donation opportunities, visit www.redcross.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS. On August 10th, you can watch a rebroadcast of this council meeting on Comcast Channel 25 at 6:30 p.m. August 11th, we'll have our next regular scheduled council meeting, a 6:30 p.m. work session in the conference room, and a 7:30 p.m. meeting here in the council chambers. August 12th, our Board of Appeals will meet here at City Hall. They'll have a 7 p.m. work session and a 7:30 p.m. meeting. And August 18th, our Snellville Public Arts Commission will meet here at City Hall at 6:30 in the community room. Now, Mr. Arrington, I picked on Jason last time. Can I have you lead us in the pledge this week? Thank you. We have no ceremonial matters tonight, and that brings us to our minutes. Do I have a motion on the minutes for the July 7th, 2014 special called meeting and the July 14th, 2014 business and public hearing meeting?
Yes, I'd like to postpone approval of those until we have a chance to review them.
There's a motion by Councilman Emanuel. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Kraus. All those in favor, is that point of clarification, is that till our next council meeting to postpone? So that will be until August 11th. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. That's 6 in favor. All those opposed, 0 opposed. The minutes stand postponed. We have no invited guests tonight, and that brings us to our committee and department reports. Mr. Sanders gave us his city manager report in the work session, so that will bring us to our report by Ms. McAloon with Snellville Tourism and Trade.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just so excited to see that the news crew is here to hear all the good news that STAT is doing in the city. I hope y'all get some good coverage. I know. I was trying to be funny, but I guess it wasn't a good joke. Anyway, since our last report in May, we've had several events. Our first and second outdoor movie at Briscoe Park was very well attended. I want to thank Councilman Bobby Howard for helping us set up our first outdoor movie, and Danny Benjamin with Parks and Rec and his family for helping clean up the movie when it ended. There was quite a bit of trash everywhere, and it was just really nice that he stuck around and helped put everything in the garbage cans. I also want to thank John and Michelle McAloon, Laura Steele, and Tanner Hall for helping with the second outdoor movie that we had this past Saturday night. And a big thank you to our presenting sponsors, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Annie Valenti, who also helped with the games that night. Our first Food Truck Friday in June was a huge success on the Green, and we're looking forward to having some more in September and October. The dates have not been decided yet, so stay tuned, and we'll keep you posted on our website. But thank you to Allison Dugan Snipes, Kathy Emanuel, Ronnie Bentley, and Trish Rollins for helping out that Friday night, because I know there were a lot of other things going on in the city. We had a skeleton crew, but it was awesome. It was a very well-attended event. Since our report falls at the end of the month, and the Star-Spangled Snellville event was mentioned at the last council meeting, I still feel it necessary to thank those who worked very hard to make that event successful. It really takes folks from several departments within the city and all our volunteers to make such a large event so successful. I want to thank our Public Works Department for preparing the city for this large event, and for our police department for keeping us safe. And most of all, to our volunteers who worked endless hours to make that event so successful. Special thanks to the elected officials that were there, Mayor Pro Tem Tom Witz, and council members Barbara Bender, Dave Emanuel, and Bobby Howard for volunteering their services throughout the event. The Metro Jazz concert this past July 19th was canceled due to inclement weather, and it has been rescheduled for September 13th from 6 to 9. We will have food trucks on site, and beer and wine will be available for purchase. If you were not able to attend our last Business After Hours event on July 24th, please join the largest networking group in Gwinnett County for the next Business After Hours event that will be scheduled sometime in October. Snellville Tourism and Trade, Greater Eastside Chamber of Commerce, and New Lawrenceville are the three powerhouse groups who teamed up and packed the house at Summit Chase Country Club last Thursday night. Commissioner Charlotte Nash presented a proclamation to Mary Long for her volunteerism with the New Lawrenceville Free Trolley Tours. And the Gwinnett Sunrise Rotary presented the Snellville Community Garden with a $500 check from the, $5,000 check, and they also donated $5,000 the year before with a grand total of $10,000 that was given to the Snellville Community Garden from the Casino Night fundraisers. And this is to build a pavilion in the garden. So, great networking event. Please stay tuned to our October event to be announced. The next fun event is our second annual City of Snellville Gwinnett Braves Community Night that will be held on August 8th. If you'd like tickets to this event, please visit our website at www.snellvilletourism.com. Follow the link using the discount code Snellville. We encourage everyone to join us on Friday night, August the 8th at 6 p.m. at Coolray Field for a parade around the warning track, followed by the game at 7:05. Visit the stat table on the concourse for your chance to win Best Spiritware. All details will be posted on our website. Other upcoming events in August are August 16th, Popcorn in the Park featuring Despicable Me 2. Stevie B's will be there selling popcorn. We be chilling with a variety of shaved ice. August 23rd will be our next concert. Electric Avenue Band will showcase the best pop records from the 80s. Food trucks will be on site, and also beer and wine will be available for purchase. No one will be allowed, however, to bring their own alcoholic beverages into the concert, so we'll have people checking at the door, at the little entrance there, at the door. If you'd like to become a member of Snellville Tourism and Trade, please visit our website for more information. Stat Board elections will be coming up in November. The applications will be posted on our website by the end of July. If you are interested in becoming a member of Snellville Tourism and Trade Board of Directors, please fill out an application and send it in. You must live inside the city limits of Snellville. Marcy Ferris and Marilyn Swinney will be co-chairing the nominations committee this year. And as always, please like us on Facebook and help us achieve our goal of 10,000 likes. And that will conclude my report.
Thank you, Ms. McAloon. We have no consent agenda tonight. That brings us to our old business under public hearing. We have a second reading on RZ 14-02. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. This is a continuance from July 14th where Mayor and Council voted to postpone for 2 weeks the decision on RZ 14-02, which is the rezoning located behind the CVS on Scenic Highway. We went over the site plan and all the variances. Previously, the one that was the rub with the church and the applicant was the buffer reduction on the southern boundary line from between 20 and 30 feet. The applicant wants to propose 20, and the church would like to see a 30-foot buffer. From what I understand, the applicant has met with the church and is here to speak about any questions you may have on the buffer issue.
And just for clarification, so everybody knows, although I'm sure everybody in this room knows what we're talking about, this is property on Highway 124 in between Grace Baptist Church and CVS.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Thompson? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Abernathy, are you here on behalf of the applicant?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name's Guy Abernathy, 174 Decula Road, Decula, Georgia, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. Wynn. The site plan that you see on the screen, I took the liberty to take the landscaping off so we could see a little bit better, but the circles, of course, represent the drip line for the trees, as we talked about before. And I've got some things that we'll go over on this site plan as we go. Just to recap a little history, we prepared documents for the city, met with them, and also then delivered packages to the adjacent property owners, which included the church and the 2 residential properties that are directly behind our site and the church. We asked for concerns, and with respect to the church, we ended up following up with them about the trees on that shared boundary, our southern boundary, their northern boundary. We told them that what we would do is we would field locate those trees. A lot of the work that we were doing was right in the time frame when they had their revival, and we postponed our planning commission meeting so that we could be real clear with what we found out there on the property. The result are the circles that you see there, which represent the center of the circle obviously would represent the tree, and the outside edge of the circle would represent the drip line. We located the property line on the ground and located the edge of the drip line on the ground, and we met with representatives from the church out on the property. The word that I got at the time was that they felt a lot better about what we were doing to resolve that issue, and we felt like we were in pretty good shape with respect to solving their issue at that time. But now we're being told that they want a 30-foot buffer. So, in our opinion, residential property owners deserve a buffer. I think it's only fair that when you're invested in a home, it's probably your largest investment, that you are protected from commercial properties going in next to you. Churches should be able to operate in residential zonings. Historically, they were right in the midst, and in fact, the case of Grace, they were right around a whole bunch of residential land. I don't have an issue with that. And a lot of times the members that go to the church and support the church live right there next to it. Yet the city recognizes that churches are more commercial in nature. They have different building codes in residential. They have site plan issues or code requirements that are required. But the city, through their code, would allow the church to remain and obtain a special use permit and operate as a non-residential use on residential property. In Grace's case, they remain a non-conforming use on the property through the variance that the city allows called grandfathering. We note that a conforming church or a new church seeking a special use permit in a residential zoning would have no buffer between itself and other commercial uses, and would have to provide a buffer between themselves and other residential properties, even though they would both be on residential zone property. A buffer is intended to maintain a vegetative screen between two dissimilar uses to lessen the harmful effects or protect something or someone from somebody else. In the last meeting, the buffer was raised as being needed to protect church property value. I think we have to consider three outcomes over time. The church could sell the property and move to another location. The church decides to grow, and then they add on the property that they're already on, or the church decide it wants to continue to operate as is. The first two situations would eliminate that buffer that we were already talking about. The church in any of these situations will always have to contend with the fact that they have a cemetery between us and them. The existing edge of the cemetery is at least 55 feet from the edge of our property and will be no closer than 75 feet as our plan is submitted to our building. The edge of the cemetery to the edge of our building would be no closer than 75 feet, and I think it's actually closer to 80 feet. The oak trees that are of concern are between the cemetery and the property line, all on the church's property. No purchaser nor church expansion is going to change the cemetery situation. Our site is at the building is about 130 feet wide. It's 136 feet wide up on the frontage of the road, but it's about 130 feet wide through our building. We have agreed to move off the church property line 20 feet and landscape heavily below the level of the trees. If you measure, I'm sorry, let me move this over a little bit. If you measure across this property right here, you get 20 foot for the shared driveway between CVS, 19 feet for a parking space, 9 feet for that island right there, 9 feet for that, 19 feet for that parking space right there, 24 feet for that driveway right through here, 19 feet there. That gives you 20 feet to get to the edge of the property and be that 130 feet. So that's why we've been pretty tight on why we felt like we needed what we need. If you have to encroach in the additional 10 feet, it's not just move a couple of these parking spots, it's lose your tree island out here. There's a lot of factors. It just makes everything so much tighter. So we are asking for the 5,000 square foot building on a 2/3 acre lot, which is not unreasonable, with 20 parking spaces that, and would like the mayor and the council to approve the variances as noted by the staff. We have agreed to provide a 20-foot, more or less, landscape strip per this plan. The wall will be no closer than 18.5 feet to the property line at its closest point. And the reason I point that out is you can see the skew actually on this end right here. And I can zoom in on that a little bit. Sorry. The edge of the parking lot is 24 feet away from the property up here on this corner, so it skews away. Also, when we're down here, this corner right here is 21 feet, and it moves out to nearly 24 feet on this end of the building. So we're actually further than what we were talking about. Sorry about that. We reiterate that our building will be no closer than the 75 feet, no closer than 20 feet to the property line, and right at 200 feet from the existing church building. It is our opinion that the church should retain the right to remain and not make site improvements if that's what they choose to do, and be able to operate as a non-conforming use in a residential zoning. However, it is our contention that the favor they are granted by the city to remain and operate as a non-conforming use should not afford them the right to dictate how much my client can utilize his property. We look at the wisdom of the mayor and council for the decision that best fits the city's needs, and will abide by its decision. Thank you for your consideration.
Questions for Mr. Abernathy? Councilman Emmanuel, you have questions? Okay, I have some questions for Mr. Abernathy, so if you'll wait just a minute. Mr. Abernathy, are you have you been hired to develop this property? Are you an engineer?
Engineer,
Okay. Has the property owner developed any property before?
no, not that I know of.
So he's a rookie in this business. Do you
Right.
know, does he have any idea the type of businesses that are gonna go in here?
I don't think he does at this time.
So you don't know what type of intrusion it could or couldn't be, or the parking or anything like that, delivery hours or anything?
I think probably, no, I do not know the answer to that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
You had a question for Mr. Thompson?
I'd like to get some clarification on the zoning. Since this is a non-conforming use on the part of the church, what takes precedence?
It's a legal non-conforming use is what we call it, so that's where the grandfathering provision comes in. Anytime an ordinance is passed after something has already been there, it's the same with the used car lots and the CUPs. As long as they continue to operate and not expand the use or the site, they can operate for as long as they want, as long as there's not an 18-month break in that operation. So they can continue on to operate until the end of the time under the ordinance, basically when they were built. So
But since they are a non-conforming use, would the zero buffer be legally preferenced, or would the 60-foot buffer
No.
be?
because they're a legal non-conforming use, they're non-conforming, but they're legal, then the buffer still applies.
Mr. Thompson, I should have asked Mr. Abernathy this, but I think you'll know the answer. Is the plan that's in front of us right now, this is what same as we saw at the last council meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any other questions for Mr. Thompson? Okay, this is on for a public hearing, so I will allow anyone that wants to come forward and speak for or against this request to state your name for the record. Name and address.
My name is Warren Auld. I reside at 2814 Williams Place in Snellville. I'm an attorney representing Grace Baptist Church in this matter. We spoke last time, and you have my notes, and you certainly have had a time to look at it, so I'm happy to answer any questions. But I just want to point out a couple of matters just to refresh. One of the things, Councilman Emanuel, it is a non-conforming use. It's a term that is really a term of art, as you're aware. It's non-conforming because the ordinance changed. The church was here and in this position long before these ordinances were drafted. So the ordinances surround the church, and so the church has a right to continue as it is, and that's why it's called non-conforming, not because it's out of any use that it has not changed its use. The city has changed the ordinance, so that's what's happened. It was a statement was made by the applicant that a residential individual has a right to protect their investment. Well, the church also has an investment. The church has an investment in the community. They've been here for over half a century. They are part of the history of this city. They have an investment in this property. They have put money into it. These are donations from individuals who go to church there. They have taken their money and contributed to what is now one of the historical sites in our city. And they've also invested in these ordinances that the city has. The church has met all its obligations. It is a good neighbor. So they're very invested in this matter. They are not asking for a favor. They're asking for the right. And that's a very important issue here. They have a right to continue, and they have a right to maintain this building as it has been. Now, you see here what has been proposed. The applicant, continues to get lost. The applicant can build a building on this property. We're not keeping the applicant from doing anything. The applicant just can't build the building that they want on this property. And that's an important distinction here. This city council is not doing anything to stop this property owner from utilizing this property in the manner in which they have a legal right to do so. They have certain other legal rights. There are certain requirements they have in the way they have to build the building. And that doesn't keep them from interfering with any rights that they have. So we're not here asking that they can't build a building. We're asking that they build a building that meets the requirements and respects the rights of this city. There's no favor that we're asking for, just a right. we're asking that the council recognize that the church has already gone a distance, recognizing half of the buffer, willing to give that up in an attempt to reach an agreement or some type of negotiated position in this matter. The applicant is unwilling to do that. The applicant says they have to have this building. The applicant had an opportunity to research. They had an opportunity to look at what this footprint looked like before they purchased, and they purchased knowing this. They brought this issue to this property themselves. They knew what they were buying. They should not be given a favor in order to create a higher return on their money. We'd ask that the council take into account what was said last week and not grant anything less than a 30-foot buffer. Thank you.
Anyone else like to come forward and speak for or against this application?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, could I ask Mr. Auld some questions since he's representing the?
Technically, he's here in public comment, so if Mr. Ald's happy to answer him, I'm happy to
I'll
defer
try,
to him.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Auld, I'm in a much better position this time than I was at the last meeting because I actually went out there and stood at the property and looked at it. And I asked another member of the church this past weekend if they intended to have the cemetery go any more towards the trees there to the left of them. And by the answer I got was, I'm sorry, that's not what I asked. I asked if they'd ever get to the trees. That's what I asked, and I was told that would never get under the trees. And when I looked at the property, I can't see through the maze there down to the other property, but it's summer, and I'm sure that in the fall and winter you may be able to. As I see this, it boils down to 10 feet. The church would want 30 feet. The applicant is willing to go 20 feet. So we're looking at 10 feet. Independently, I look at that and I say, I don't know, and I really don't, so I'm not being facetious. I really don't know what more 10 feet is going to do to that. If you can't see through it, and it's down a hill from you, from where the church is. I don't know what that additional 10 feet is going to grant to the church. I'm not saying it doesn't, I just don't know what it is. By the same token, I'm in agreement with you that the applicant knew what he was buying when he bought it. As I was thinking about this, and also the fact that you said the church does want to be a good neighbor, and I certainly believe that the applicant is not trying to be anything but a good neighbor too. I think he's looking to develop a property and get into business here. I understand this is his first venture. Would the church consider if the applicant, and I have no idea, based on what I saw in an email Friday, I don't think it's possible, but I just want to know for my own good, is it possible that the church would be willing to settle at 25 feet, where that would give you 5 more additional feet than what you're originally getting, and it would make the applicant, grant another 5 feet, and now we're down to 5 feet. And I really don't know that 5 feet would make the difference between hurting the church's property and not hurting it. Could you address that
Yes,
for
if
me,
I could.
please?
A couple of things. As to what the church is willing to do, I think I'm going to let one of the representatives from the church speak to that. But let me just, a couple of things. I think we're really not talking about 10 feet. We're talking about 60 feet and 30 feet. Part of the problem in any type of negotiation is the minute you begin negotiating, you begin to bid against yourself, and that's kind of what we're being asked to do. We've already said 30 feet is fine. We'll give that up. And now we're asked for more. So we're not really just talking about 10 feet. We're really talking about having given up 30 feet already. But you made an important point, and that is, you said, I don't know what it's going to look like. We can't tell. And that's an important point, and that's the reason why there's a buffer, because we don't know. We want to keep that area distance, because doing away with it could create, and in this case, as we've indicated by some letters that we put into record last time, a likelihood of a decrease in value. So it's not knowing is one of the reasons we keep the buffer. And we have given up a good bit, but as to whether they're willing to go from 30 to 25, if I would, Mr. Witz, I think that if someone would like to speak to that.
If we could hold until everyone's done with your questions, and then, sir, if you want to come forward and answer that, but we'll make sure no one has any other questions for Mr. Ald. Because I have a clarification, but go ahead, Mr.
I've
Mayor.
got a question. I went out and walked the property, and it seems, I don't understand the significance of the 10 feet. There are places where I can't see through it. I can't see 10 feet into the buffer. There are other places I can see all the way through it. So if the buffer was 50 feet or 60 feet, you'd still be able to see through it based on where you're looking from. Why is this 30-foot seems like some magical number?
Well, I think the answer to that is at some point in the past, the city council in its wisdom indicated that a 60-foot buffer and the buffers that are put into ordinance were the proper amount. And there was a decision made among, and we begin at that point. So to ask me why that amount is appropriate, I'd have to go back and understand why they made that decision. As to the physical setting as it is right now, it gets back again, I think the question you're asking, how do we know if it's going to be a problem? Well, if we know if it's going to be a problem, I suggest to you that the right path to take is the conservative path, and to recognize that a decision made by the city council in establishing these ordinances estimated a larger distance as opposed to a shorter one because it needed that protection. And so if we don't know what the distance, lessening the distance will cause a problem or not, let's be conservative and keep that. What we've said is we'll go to 30 feet. We've given a lot. We're just asking that that be respected, that the council respect the distance and the amount that the church has been willing to go in order to meet halfway. And that's why. 29 feet, 30 feet, certainly we could argue about the difference, and I understand your point. But again, we're just asking that this be where the line is.
Well, from what I can see, the 60-foot is off the table. 60 foot is something that was. We're down to 30 feet or 20 feet, and frankly, I can't see a lot of difference in terms of what you can see and what you can't see. 60 foot has nothing to do with this. And my concern is that we're looking at something and saying 30 feet's magic. Well, we don't know that 30 feet is. So we don't know that 30 feet functionally is any better than 20 feet from what you can see. Because when I walk through there now, I can't see through in some places and I can see straight through in others. So I'm just wondering, it just seems like this 30 foot is a little bit too inflexible, and I want to find out if there's a good reason for that.
Well, I get back again to the question of inflexibility. When we begin at 60 feet, if we were standing here asking for 60 feet and you said we're inflexible, I think it would be an excellent argument. But already the church has gone half the distance and said, let's meet them. And we're actually now being penalized for being good neighbors early on by saying, because you said 30 feet, give another 10 feet. If we were in here asking for 40 feet, I think the argument would be, why not make it 30 feet instead of 40 feet? It is, and I think that from a functionality issue, I don't know, because I'm not an engineer. And I don't know what, we look at a drawing up here, and I've been through enough of these to know that the drawing and the actuality tend to have some serious and substantial differences. That's another reason for the buffer, is because the protection of that property and the ordinance as it stands creates a right. The functionality, purpose of it creates a protection for property interest. And that's what we ask for, Mr. Emanuel.
Mr. Ald, can you clarify, and this may be a question for Mr. Thompson instead. I think we're talking about apples and oranges. The church is asking for a 30-foot undisturbed buffer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what the applicant, the 20-foot buffer that is being thrown around by the applicant is a 20-foot landscape buffer, is my understanding. Is that correct, Mr. Thompson? And so there is a difference between an undisturbed buffer and a landscape buffer. It's not just a 10-foot difference. It's the type of buffer that's being asked for. Is that correct, Mr. Thompson? Sorry, Mr. Ald.
That is correct. That means in an undisturbed buffer that nothing is replanted, it's not enhanced, The slope remains, so essentially a 30-foot buffer could turn into a 35 or 40-foot buffer because you're not able to dig into that buffer on that slope and build the wall. So it would probably push it out even a little more.
And so right now, there are trees in that 30-foot buffer, and so what the church is asking for is that those trees basically remain undisturbed.
Yeah, the pines, I believe, that were planted probably with the CVS building as a buffer at that time.
And a landscape buffer would entail what?
Basically what's shown on the plan, you come in, you clear it out, and then you come back, you replant it with buffer type plants and trees that would provide more of a screening than.
Those trees would be new plantings. They wouldn't have the maturity, arguably, as some of the existing trees. Is that right?
Well, the oaks are really the only mature trees over there besides a few pines that are maybe 3 or 4 inches.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
And they wouldn't necessarily be trees, they'd be bushes to screen as opposed to a tree,
Well, there'd
or some combination.
There'd be a mixture that was basically laid out by the landscape architect to take into account the light and the conditions of the soil, but the end result would be a screening.
So a landscape buffer would be harder to see through than a natural buffer,
Well,
if it was
depends.
planted properly.
Yeah, enhanced buffers are typically what we require, unless the buffer is so thick, which is the case behind the building. Those trees have been there for a long, long time, and you cannot see the house behind there when you're standing on that wall because it's a little more mature, and there would be a fence there as well.
I'm sorry, Mr. Auld, did you have anything else, or are you good?
Thank you, no.
Would anyone else like to speak for or against this application?
Marcy Ferris, 1749 Ridgedale Drive. I don't think last time we settled, there's the topography there's going to be a drop. And how are they going to be able to keep us from seeing any equipment on the roof? That's got to all be screened, and how is that going to be done? Mr. Abernathy just stated a few moments ago that if they don't get the variance on the buffer, that it would make it too tight with parking spaces and everything else to do this, which tells me the building is too big for the property. It's a 5,000 square foot building. Reduce the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferris. Additional public comment?
Donald Bramlett, 789 Gene Bell Road in Monroe, Georgia. I lived up here all my life, and I moved out. I'd like to say that we want the 30 feet. We're not gonna, we don't want the 20, we want the 30. 10 feet may not mean nothing to anybody, but the 10 feet means a lot to us. I just put it this way. If somebody come over and wanted to put a chicken house down there where I live, and they wanted to do away with the bumper zone, the zone between me and that chicken house, 10 feet would be a lot of, and nobody'd want to give up 10 feet, 30 feet, or 60 feet. I'd like to see the 60 feet. We've got plaques up there for the grave sites of people to be buried in. And another thing that I'm really concerned about is trees. I know when I lived up here before, trees didn't mean much. They'd come in here and cut them down faster than you could plant them. But trees mean a lot. And we hadn't heard anybody that represented this place come up and say that putting that bumper in there is going to protect our trees, because I know they say the drip zone. That drip zone goes every year. It goes a little further. And when you disturb all this ground and you kill all those trees up there, then I'm going to take pictures and bring them back down here and show you what you've done to us. And I really hope you consider giving us, turning this down and giving us the 30 feet we're asking for. We're not asking for much. We give on the other side to the to that filling station up there, and they come in and made a mess up there. And we give this we give the county right away up our front to put a water sewage line in, and then we asked to tap onto that, and they wanted to charge us $2,500 to $5,000 to tap on that. So we give and give and give, and we don't want to give no more. We want to keep our place just like it is. We don't care nothing about what the cost of that, the value of that Grace Baptist Church is. It can fall to $1 on the 100 for all we care. We want to keep it just like it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Dennis Lawton, 3041 Alta Ridge Way. One thing that bothers me more about this particular zoning is that the number of variances that you as a city council are going to have to allow against our ordinances in order to meet that. Yet this gentleman had the opportunity, just like any other developer, to look at that site without variances based on ordinances that were allowed. He built a 5,000 square foot building based on variances, not on our ordinances. When we start doing that, what are you going to do in the future if you don't start considering how many variances are you going to have in front of you every time to do it? There's time when there are good variances. There's times that you got to look at all of them. This gentleman on a small lot has asked for a lot of variances from you folks. And that's my number one consideration. I think, the buffers and stuff like that, the 20-foot, 30-foot, whatever it is, you just started a variance after variance after variance. And so if that lot wasn't buildable with something else, and the other thing Mayor Couts brought up, he doesn't even know what he's going to put in there. So if I don't know what I'm putting in there, why do I need a variance to meet somebody else's needs? Maybe I'm not going to meet those needs with a 5,000 square foot building. And we sure don't need a brand new empty building in the city of Snellville.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton. Additional public comment. Seeing none, I'll close the public comment on this item. Mr. Abernathy, I will give you an opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the short and sweet thing is to say I appreciate your consideration, and I'll answer any additional questions you have. I think we've been over why the variances are there as a rebuttal to that particular issue. Most of them are sightline things, topo things, adherence back to the 40-foot that was already there back when the property was original zone. I think it really boils down to a decision over the 20 feet that we're willing to do and the 30 feet that they're wanting to keep.
Thank you, Mr. Abernathy. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Abernathy?
I do. Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
when the 20-foot buffer all got started and talked about, was there ever an agreement with the church that 20 was going to be okay? At what point did it not become okay, if that was the case? And I'm just asking.
It'll take about 45 seconds to, basically, we drew a plan looking at the property that existed, and we knew that the topo was there. A lot of times when you're looking at boundary issues, you don't know all the parameters around the property. We knew there were trees on their property, we just didn't know exactly where they were because a survey hadn't been done. And what we did is we showed a wall 6 feet into the property that we were planning to build up to the level that the trees were at and come in behind their trees and plant that screening that you see on the current plan. the issue came up that there was concern, that the church had concern about the trees, and that's when we said, we'll go out there and we'll determine where those trees really are. And if you remember at the last meeting, and I've got the plan if you need to see it, but if you remember at the last meeting, I showed you the cross sections that showed where the drip line for the trees were and how the slope started coming down. And we made the decision, we probably could have done it in 15 feet, but we made the decision to go on out to 20 feet to have a little bit more of a clearance beyond the drip line. As Mr. Bramlett was pointing out a minute ago, you know, where you see those drip lines, we wanted to make sure any work we were going to do on our building or our walls was well beyond that. And then we were going to cut that out, put the wall in, and be able to come back and fill in and plant and still not get into anywhere close to those trees. So that's really how the 20 feet got determined.
Okay, just bear with me, just so I'm
No,
clear.
that's fine.
So, there was a time when 20 was okay. Is that, or am I mischaracterizing that?
We've never agreed, the church and I. on-
Okay, I just want to be, it's a part of being clear and asking questions, folks, that's all. It's simple.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Abernathy. Is there a motion by council?
I'd like to ask, Mr. Abernathy, I got distracted, my phone went off. Like once a meeting, if it don't happen, and it's like I'm not really here. I just asked the church a question, I think you heard me. I'm trying to justify this 20 feet, 30 feet difference that you have. It would appear to me that the church is not budging off of that 30 feet. And if I'm wrong, please someone correct me. But should the church decide that they could live with 25 feet, is that something that you would consider, or are you as stuck on 20 feet as the church is out there? I'm not saying either one of you are wrong. I'm just saying that's where you seem to be.
Well, it's a very fair question. As I was explaining a while ago, it creates a certain amount of difficulty on us. I showed the measurement. First of all, we're living with a shared driveway with CVS. Somebody asked us the question, could you turn the building this way and make it fit a little bit better? This is their dumpster area. You pretty much render everybody that you're trying to lease to facing their dumpster. That's not an acceptable option. So we need to face the road. If you measure the drive aisles, you got 20, 19, and I explained all that a while ago, and it works out exactly to the need for 20 feet. As I said when I finished up my comment a while ago, you guys know what's best for the city. We will abide by your decision. I would prefer not to give up the 5 feet. If that's what you do, then we'll figure out a way to do what we can do with the remainder of the property. The hardship for us is when you move in 5 feet, it's not just move that over 5 feet, it's losing spaces, losing manipulation room, and it's tight as it is. So what you want to do is have enough flexibility to move a curb line a little bit, to open up some space for people to be able to get their cars in there and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we're at. We'll figure it out. It may mean that we have a smaller building. It may mean that we have 18 parking spaces rather than 20 parking spaces. Of course, you know my contention is that the church is not damaged one iota over anything that we're proposing. And so the short answer to your question is we'll work with whatever you say.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ald, and I'm only speaking to you because you represent, and I don't really know who need to talk to, but we've now heard that perhaps there is a chance at 25 feet. And all I'm trying to do is see if there's enough of the church that would be willing to do that. If not, that's their business. I'm just saying that we're now within 5 feet. And if it's an absolute no, it's an absolute no. However, and let's all be fair, and I don't know where this vote is going. I know that the lady on my left is not convinced I'm right. we're going to vote, it could end up 20, or if we can come to an agreement, we have 25. So, I mean,
Councilman Woods, are you speaking of 25 undisturbed or 25 landscape?
well, what I understand, the landscape's going to be a better buffer. It's going to be a bit better buffer than the undisturbed, am I right?
Actually, we are asking for undisturbed.
I'm sorry?
We are actually asking for undisturbed.
Okay, well, let's consider the 25 undisturbed then.
I would have to,
I mean,
refer
it's-
to what was
it's up-
stated
it's up to
already,
the-
and that the 30-foot is what they have stated.
I understand. He also stated the 20 though, but he's come off that.
Yeah. And I am not in a position right now.
I
because I'm
understand.
not- I'd have to ask someone from the, speak for the church.
What if we do this? What if we postpone it to consider it?
Mr. Bramley would ask Mr. Bramley to step forward since he's speaking. for the
Okay,
church.
sure.
This sounds, like we're being real sticky, but I think they're being real stickier than we are. And, we're not going to, go for, we'd like to go back to 60. If we want to vote on it, we'd like to go to 60. And, because I got a letter from this, group that, told me that they were willing to, go from a 0 to a 10%. And then I get up here and they back on the 20. They like to have it with no bumpers on. That's
But
what
they can't.
That's what they would like.
Sure,
But
but
we're
they-
not we're not gonna budge.
That's
And,
not gonna happen.
We'll take what y'all give us and, we'll live with it. And, but I hope that you vote in our favor.
I have a motion by council. Do I have a motion by council?
Can I ask Jason a question? Jason, if we deny this tonight, does that mean that this property, he could not bring this back for a year? Isn't there a rule like that or something? If he wanted to take a variance?
I'll defer to Mr. Powell, but I know
I'm
on
sorry.
rezonings that it's a year, and with variances, I'm not sure if it plays out the same way, but I know rezoning requests.
Well, this is a reason.
Right.
Right.
That if you were to just deny that variance, I think that's different from denying the whole rezoning. But Mr. Powell speak.
Mr. Powell?
There's a state provision barring reconsideration of it. It's not a rezoning, it's a zoning action under that definition. This would qualify for the bar.
So that it would be off the table for rezoning for 1 year.
For the rezoning request that's been asked for.
Asked
I mean, you
for.
could go for a
It'd be-
different classification.
Right, but if you want to go from it's OI to BG, that's off the table for a year, if we vote to not deny tonight.
Yes, sir.
Then, I'd make a motion that we postpone this to let I don't want to see, this Mr. Trin is, or Wynn, whatever his name is, he's a first-time developer, from what I understand, and I just don't want to see him shut down for a year without him having every opportunity to see if he wants to reduce the size of this building to maintain the BG, or do something else. It's quite obvious that this 20 to 30 feet is something that's not going to go away. I'm reluctant to take a vote tonight. I don't see anybody winning there. If it goes to 20 feet, then, or if it goes to 20 feet, then the people in the church are going to be upset. And we've other people in the crowd saying that the building, in their opinion, the building's too big. I'm a carpenter. I'm not a builder. So I'm going to ask that we postpone this indefinitely so that we don't ruin Mr. Trin and Mr. Abernathy's opportunity to come back with something that is a little bit more appropriate, and with that, perhaps get to work it out with the church on that 5 feet, or decide that whether they want to do something that they can do with the 30 feet. And that way it leaves it open for them. And it doesn't hurt the church at this time. So I
Mr. Powell, point of clarification, if you postpone indefinitely, that doesn't give the adjacent property owners notice of the hearing date. How would that?
And that is the problem. That's everything about what you said was fine, except for the indefinitely. We probably need to get it back. And there are a lot of options in the interim. You can withdraw or allow withdrawal, and there's some options that take it off the table completely that they could elect to. But I would postpone it to the next meeting so you're on the notice period, so everybody knows it's coming back up, and then let the different parties either negotiate or decide withdrawal.
Can we go longer than the next meeting?
I wouldn't do that.
You wouldn't do that?
I would not recommend that.
Well, to me, that's kind of kicking the can down the road, but and not really coming to a resolution. But that's better than us. I believe that's better than us voting tonight and denying the developer and the property owner an opportunity to do something that is livable with the church.
And it is just that. The law, these are state regulations, not our city code, but the law requires you to deal with it when it comes up. And it packs it in there with the notice requirements so that everybody knows what's going on. And then there's the time bar. Once it's ruled on, there's no expectation of the property owners that it's going to come back up again immediately.
This will be it.
It's a package that they require us to follow.
Right.
There's a motion to postpone until our next council meeting, August 11th, 2014. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Emmanuel. Further discussion by the council?
I would only ask that, we give you this 2 weeks. I would ask the people in the church to consider, go look at the property again and consider whether that 5 feet is important. If it is, God bless you, I understand. It'll then be up to the developer to see if he can't work something out that'll work with that. All I want to do is make sure that each side has an opportunity to do something and to do it with all the knowledge and no hard feelings between anybody. It gives an opportunity to work it out. If you can't work it out and the developer can't come in with something smaller, then we'll vote on it next time. I'll be honest with you, I don't know which way it would go. I don't know which way it would have went tonight. I really don't know. But I think everybody benefits by giving the additional till August 11th to reconsider it. Thank you.
Councilman Emmanuel, you had something to say?
I think it's the right decision. I would again encourage the church group to look at the 25 feet. It may not be a doable situation from your perspective. I have a real hard problem figuring that 5 feet is that big an issue, but it may be. But I'd encourage you to look at it. It's a difficult situation. I understand you're trying to preserve what you've got. Unfortunately, sometimes progress gets in the way. And I also look at this is a big building. It's a big footprint on that piece of property. I can see arguments on both sides that have some validity. And it would be nice if we could all reach an agreement. That may not be possible, but I would at least encourage you to give it some discussion, give it some thought, and we'll see where we are in 2 weeks.
I supported postponing this matter 2 weeks ago because I was hopeful that maybe we could reach a resolution, but we've had 2 weeks and we're back at the same place we were. I don't think that 2 more weeks is going to change anything. I think that for some of the people sitting up here, this is the first time we've really had a contentious zoning issue. But this is what we as mayor and council were elected to decide. This isn't something that is the responsibility of the property owners or the responsibility of the developer. We have conflicting interests, and as mayor and council, it's our responsibility to the citizens of Snellville to decide how we want to enforce our ordinances. And I don't think it's fair to have, we've had a packed house for the past 2 meetings. I don't think it's fair to these people to continue to send them out and ask them to come back again. So I think this is something we need to bite the bullet and decide tonight, one way or the other. I don't think that, I think the past 2 weeks, the fact that we haven't gotten anywhere, we haven't made any progress, we're still at the same place we were not just 2 weeks ago, but back at the Planning Commission meeting, 2 months ago? So I don't think 2 weeks is going to matter one bit in this matter, and will not support the postponement tonight for those reasons.
Mayor, I disagree. I think we have made some progress. We now have a developer that's willing to go to the 25 feet. I'm only giving, at this point, I think that is a development, and I think that we have come quite a ways since the last meeting. We've come another 5 feet. So We have.
Councilman
So
Woods, I
I'm
believe
just-
I believe the developer, the applicant
Sir,
stated.
I'm just all I'm trying to do is give everyone an opportunity. 2 weeks happens, and we'll go and vote what it is. Bear in mind, though, it could end up 20 feet. And you know, so you have an opportunity for to talk about, that's all. And again, let's we'll see what happens in 2 weeks.
And just so the record's clear, Mr. Abernathy, you haven't consented to the 25 feet. I believe your statement was you would take what the council gave you at this point in time. Are you conceding the 25 feet tonight? You'll take what the council gives you. Thank you, sir. With that, I will call the question. All those in favor of the postponement signify by raising your right hand. That's 5 in favor. All those opposed, 1 opposed. This matter will be postponed until our August 11th council meeting. Thank you for coming out tonight. That brings us to item B.